All politicians are the same. I'm not voting this year. Does that sound familiar? Warning bells of mass voter apathy are pealing across the electorate as more and more Ghanaians express their reluctance to queue in the sun to make what they see as no choice at all. I wonder if you are one of them. Well, if you are, then my guest tonight is the person paid by the state to change your mind. Let's see how she does in just a moment. 25 years of bold, fearless journalism. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Upfront. My name is Kojo Yankson. Today, Multimedia launched its election coverage platform, Election Headquarters, under the theme, Building an Informed Electorate. Now, at the launch, an increasingly familiar theme started to emerge, voter apathy. Check this out.
He promised us to reduce the taxes. We all know that when the reduces of taxes came down, all our prices is down, so everybody will come and buy it from us. But when the prices is high, no one will come and buy. So we are pleading on the government so that it should do something about the tax. As Ghanaians, right now we are fed up because they will come today, they will say, I'll give you hay. But tomorrow it's not that. What they would promise us to offer us, they did not. But now, I don't know, this 2020, I'll just queue the line and go and vote.
You mean you'll not vote?
No, because I've had enough. Party here will come. I'll do this, I'll do. If it has market women, we are the ones supporting the economists. But nothing is decided to do for us. We are now sitting on the sun to struggle so that the government will come, tax us, AMA tickets, AMA baller, AMA lances, and nothing good is doing to us. So right now I'm fed up.
Baller, you 50 pesos.
We pay 50 pesos for clearing of the rubbish. AMA takes 1 cedi, but they do nothing. They tell us it's for selling on the land. My current situation will determine how I vote. It's been good so far because of free SHS. Even if I lose my fingers, I'll vote with my toes because of free SHS.
Why? Because
a lot of things will influence how I vote. We pay AMA taxes of 1 cedi. Trash vendors come and also take 50 pesos. But there's always rubbish here.
Most of the time, say bola ba jolly oshi. They buy one and care about many babo yaleke about Chicago low bola, kaya bola baba kwaya.
And we pay other service providers for them to collect the rubbish. We don't understand.
Recently, announced income tax. Ghanaian women, we are suffering. One boy market women.
Patronage of our goods is low, and prices of goods generally have gone up. In December, I will vote for change. I won't tell you who.
So who are you voting for?
One policies that is going to help our businesses, our education, and everything. This current government have brought many policies about education, and we can observe and see what is going on.
Which part of it concerns you?
The free education, because right now I am concerned about the quality of the education. Sometimes when we see when things are free, it's free of quality, you see. So the quality has a problem. But considering having everybody into the education system, you see that is a very good thing. But let's work on the quality. So John Mahama is saying that he's coming to work on the quality, whilst Audankwa is saying that he's going to continue with quality. So let's see what they bring to us as their manifesto, and it will foster our votes.
Right. Well, those were actually voices of some people saying they will vote and explaining what they would cast their vote on. Believe me when I tell you, there were others who said they won't. If only we could have brought you that clip. Anyway, there are some, however, who are advising that not voting is not an option. Here's the Greater Accra Regional Market Queen. Listen to her.
Whatever the economy is, whether good or bad, that doesn't make you not to vote. voting is your right. You can just go there and exhibit what you think, but not to vote is not an option.
Okay. So great. I see you're talking about the voter apathy, and that's a very good thing. That's a very good appeal that you're making.
So what I will advise market women, don't say I won't vote.
Is it because you've heard a lot more of them say that they won't vote because they're not happy?
Yes, I saw some on the stream that the market women are saying they are fed up, they are tired, so many taxes, they are not going to vote. That is not an option. Presently, as we are now, we should look at what the business we are doing in the market and see whether the business is good or bad. If you come to the market and they don't buy, naturally, you cannot say the economy is good. You say the economy is bad. If you come and they buy tomorrow, you get a lot of money, the economy is good. That is how we weigh the economy.
Okay.
All right, well, let's get to it. My guest tonight is the chairman of the National Commission for Civic Education. It's her job to educate Ghanaians on their civic duties, which includes voting. How is she going to do this to an increasingly jaded electorate? Let's find out. Madam Josephine Nkrumah, how nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, Kojo.
Excellent. Well, you've heard it, and I'm sure it's not the first time. There are many who express this view on social media and in conversations that, well, they don't see much of a choice in 2020. There's not much to choose between when it comes to politicians. They're all saying the same thing. So they're not going to bother voting. It doesn't get them what they want. You can understand them, can't you?
Yeah. Well, if we go on the field as we have done in the past, you indeed see a growing number of disillusioned Ghanaians. And of course, it is because the expectations perhaps are not being met. And so they think, why should I go and stand in the sun and vote when it doesn't translate into my well-being? So a lot of them do say, and particularly among the youth. We've spoken to potentially first-time voters who have expressed that, no, I don't really think I'm going to bother because I haven't seen anything good going on. But I also believe in the saying that when wise people fail to vote, foolish people determine your leaders. And so, in as much as you see that growing apathy, I think we need to reverse the thinking and tell them, okay, you're looking at it that if I don't, whether I vote or not, nothing good comes out of it. But consider what happens when you don't vote for the change or otherwise that you want. If you don't go and cast your vote, you are potentially allowing somebody who may not have your interest or who may not share your interest determine who becomes your leader. And that is the kind of message we're sending around. We want Ghanaians to understand that voting really gives you the power as determined by our constitution. When people begin to understand that your sovereign right and power is what you have delegated to public officers and politicians to act for and on your behalf in your interest, they would understand that, you know, as we always say, the power of the thumb. It is indeed the power of the thumb. But more importantly, we should begin to be more discerning as voters. When a politician comes to promise you heaven on earth, we must begin to interrogate those promises. We want a more savvy voter who doesn't take in hook, line, and sinker whatever is sold to him or her. We want a Ghanaian who begins to ask, you say you promised me this. How are you going about it? What steps are you going to take? And do these steps seem realistic? Can you meet these objectives that you have spoken about within the period that we would give you the power to do so? And we should also understand that perhaps maybe we are in a hurry. Ghanaians are in a hurry because people are talking, oh, 63 years, and people even say it wasn't worth it to have independence. I said, well, try the other side and see. It was worth it. And we must continue to make it worth our while. And how do we do this? Ghanaians should stop listening I mean, sorry, just taking everything in. When you came, you said you do this, I haven't seen it. No. Begin to interrogate the issues so that you can determine whether that person can deliver. And if you know that what that person is saying cannot be achieved, then you know that that is not the person you should be voting for.
Do we have an electorate which is largely capable of doing what you're calling upon them to do? I mean,
that's partly the role of
the literacy levels.
Yeah, that is partly the role of or largely the role of civic education, to build civic illumination so Ghanaians can begin to appreciate issues and, you know, take decisions based on their understanding of those issues. So for instance, typically when we've given platforms to parliamentary candidates, on our platforms, you know, they come and they begin to promise some of these things. They begin to talk about who they are going to be, the development agent, which largely is not the role of parliamentarians. And when you even speak to some of these candidates and say to them that, listen, that is not your role. You're making your own work difficult by saying that you're going to do A, B, C, D, I'm going to build bridges, I'm going to build you roads and things, when it's not really your duty as spelled out under the Constitution. They get upset with us.
But are they not simply giving the people what they want?
Because you have given it to them and they've come to expect it. So we want to help by saying, don't begin to make those promises, because that is what ultimately makes you fail. And sometimes we've had incumbents being, you know, a bit jittery when we talk about parliamentary candidates debates. Why? Because, you know, the things you promised, you're unable to fulfill. So when you come back to them, say, you promised this, you can't do it. You promised that, you can't do it. And then the opposition is also going to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they think, well, we gave it to you, didn't do it, I might as well change and go the other way. You see, so when you speak about it, these same people get upset with you. If I don't say it, my opponent will say it, and he would take away my votes.
That's a real concern.
That's a real concern. But we need to be working more with the parliamentarians for them to understand that sometimes these pronouncements and promises actually backfire. Let Ghanaians begin to appreciate the real responsibility of parliamentarians, the real responsibility of local governments and district assemblies. When we begin to appreciate that, it puts things in better perspective. So the whole issue even of vote buying is something that we talk about. And vote buying is becoming, you know, a big problem. I've had you know, persons who want to stand at primaries. I've spoken with them, and some of them are talking about how it is so expensive. Why is it expensive? Because you need to give out. So it's become a vicious cycle, really.
Is it not perhaps a better process to educate the public not to expect these things?
Yes.
Or to actually to open their eyes and let them see that what you're being promised, this person can't.
We do
provide
that.
Them.
We do that.
Is it not a more effective way of dealing with the problem than trying to convince the MPs not to promise?
No, I'm saying that because talking with the citizenry, engaging them on this is something that we do constantly. But you see, whilst you're engaging the citizenry and telling them, listen, this is not what they're supposed to do, and indeed they can't fulfill it. And even going further to say, if they say they can do it, you should question where they're going to get the money from. And beyond that, you should ask yourself, if they get the money, when they come to power, how do you think they're going to recoup their so-called investments? And that becomes an issue for them to grapple with. But then the same person comes to stand there and assert that, yes, indeed, I'm going to do it. And if you have a citizenry that is, you know, ignorant, they begin to say, but these people said they can do it. If he couldn't do it, would he come and say? So the real test becomes, you give him your vote, he comes to power, he can't perform, you are disillusioned, and you think, okay, I'm not going to vote again, or I'm going to vote you out. So we all need, it needs concerted effort. We can't just think that we're only going to deal with the citizenry, and we would, I mean, of course, the parliamentarians are also part of the citizenry, but we are not only going to deal with the voters and expect that everything would be okay. We need to effectively engage our parliamentarians as well to bring some sanity into that space. I think the issue that is beginning to worry a lot of Ghanaians also is even the process of arriving at who becomes a candidate. If we see time and again that you hear of how delegates are bought to determine who becomes a candidate. And that for me spells a big issue right from the onset. So you have somebody who says, I want to lead, but has a question mark. You had to pay a delegate in order for him to endorse you as a candidate. What do you think happens when that person comes to power? So you begin to question even the candidates that are presented to us as a people. And you see, largely most of them are tainted. So our whole electoral process itself, we need to take a second look at it in determining how we arrive at who becomes a candidate, and perhaps bring in some sanity, or we need to sanitize that space so that by the time you come to who becomes who is endorsed as a candidate, you are fairly confident in the process. Right. Yes.
We're talking to Josephine Nkrumah. She is the chairman of the NCCE. It's her and her team's job to get us as informed as possible for the election 2020. When we come back, we'll talk about their plans, the specific plans they've got in place to make sure that by the time you cast your vote, you know everything you need to know. Not just you, but everybody else across the country who's eligible to cast their vote. All that when we return. You're welcome back. This is UPfront, and my name is Kojo Yankson. Our guest tonight is Josephine Nkrumah, the chairman of the NCCE. They've got a big duty. It's an election year. They have to educate Ghanaians on their civic duties, help Ghanaians understand whatever they need to understand in order to cast an informed vote in December. But we're already hearing warning signals of mass apathy on the part of some of our electorate. So how is the NCCE gearing up to combat this? So before the break, we were talking about the general problem of apathy and what causes it. So now let's look at how NCCE is planning to tackle it. First of all, what's the plan for this year? What exactly are the things that NCCE intends to achieve by election day?
Okay, so for this year, first thing we did is determining our theme. And our theme for this year is the future of Ghana is in your hands. It is for us to understand that the future of this country is not dependent on any politician. It's dependent on the role of each and every one of us. So whoever it is, whether you're a child, you're a voter, everybody has a role to play in ensuring that we have free, fair, and transparent elections. Of course, we're looking at the issue of peace. So there's a lot of focus, targeted education in hotspots. We're also doing a lot of work with our inter-party dialogue committees, which we set up last year towards election this year.
How is that working out?
So the inter-party dialogue committees are committees at the district level, the regional level, and then we have a national level, where we have representatives of political parties, all other stakeholders, the security agencies, the clergy, the Muslim community, the National Peace Council, the Electoral Commission itself. And the essence, so the objective of this committee is to ensure that issues that come up, especially issues that have a potential to rupture into some level of violence, is nipped in the bud at that level. So at the grassroots level, we begin to engage party representatives and all who play a role during elections. So there's also the issue of name and shame, where things like intemperate language is used, you're fanning all manner of unrest, we address those issues there before they escalate into anything. So that the priority is to ensure peace, because we don't want to see anything, escalating to something that we cannot handle. And so we work closely with all the stakeholders.
I asked about that specifically as how is it doing? Because we saw what happened last year at Ayawaso. Now, when the white paper was issued by government, was there anything in there for the NCC to do, any action points in the white paper for the NCC?
No, not particularly, but we had the roadmap also from the National Peace Council, from the whole issue of vigilantism, and there's a lot of activities for the NCC to do, basically engaging the citizenry, engaging stakeholders to understand their civic rights.
Were you surprised, though, that the state didn't think you had a role to play in solving the problem or preventing another Ayawaso?
No, I wasn't surprised. You see, our elections or our governance system has become very election focused. So everything is driven around the day of elections. And so all the focus, all the attention, all the resources and activities are around the election proper. We forget about the things that actually make elections happen. We forget that the citizenry's understanding, the citizenry's attitudes, our psyche, all goes into ensuring that elections are peaceful, all goes into ensuring that elections are accepted by all parties. But oftentimes we disregard that. And so the role of NCC is relegated to the background. The focus is on the elections, and so what happens between one election and the next election is almost as if we go to bed thinking that everything would just pan out, and on election day, we should all hurry and then make sure election is free, fair, and transparent, and then it's all okay. But that is what has led to the kind of apathy we're seeing today, because all of us think that it's about elections, and we forget the critical in-between, where you must be gearing up and psyching the people, building a more discerning citizenry, making them understand their role in the governance process leading up to elections, so that we find elections as something that culminates all the work that we've done. We don't have that. We don't have that kind of attention that we need to put on the in-between period.
Do you think it's because we forget? Or is it deliberate? After all, do politicians not benefit from having a less informed electorate?
Could you have said this before, when a politician has said, Madam, I've complained about finance and resources, and they said to me, Madam, why do you think we should fund you? If we do that, it's not in our interest. An enlightened citizenry does not help us. And I'm beginning to appreciate the point that was made then. Because you'd see, I won't say, but it was. You may suspect, like you are saying, don't you think? We all think about it. When somebody comes out and actually says it in your face, and you begin to ask yourself, oh, so is this deliberate? Are we actually orchestrating this semblance of, oh, there are no resources to give you? It's more, planned that let's keep it that way, because we keep the citizenry where they ought to be kept, so that they don't understand what the real issues are. We can buy them with a few CDs on, prior to elections, and we have our way, we come, loot, and then the process goes on and on. But I think that I also think that the media is playing a great role now. You see the work that media is doing, and it's fascinating, and it complements the work of NCC. I like to talk about our issues of our research we do during elections.
Oh yes, I do want to hear about that, but let me wrap up on this thing about the funding.
Yes.
Give us a clear picture. This year, for example, how much have you been given to do your work?
This year, we had a budget of about 7 million cedis.
Is that what you asked for, or?
No, it's not what we asked for.
Okay.
We asked for a lot more than that.
How much did you ask
We
for?
asked, I think about 30 million.
You asked for 30 million?
Just about 30 million.
You've had 7 million approved?
7 million approved, not released.
So how much of it has been released?
As of yesterday, I think we've had a little of 2 million,
okay,
if I'm not mistaken. But you see, the key concern for NCC right now, it's not even about the money that you give us for goods and services. That the money, the 7 million that I told you, is to cover all administrative expenses, implementing our programs the whole year. So you can work the math.
How much does one advertising campaign cost?
Thank you. We have 260 district offices. We have 16 regional offices and 1 head office. So you just work the math and you see that it's woefully inadequate. But the more pressing issue right now even is retooling the commission. We have a fleet of vehicles that run down, totally depreciated. We don't have office equipment, public address systems, and the law enjoins us to go down to the grassroots. So if I don't have the vehicle to go down, if I don't have the public address system to reach people, if I can't go on radio every time, there's only so much I can do. And that for me is now the crux of the matter. We want to be retooled. We want to see vehicles, we want to see our public address systems, the tools that allow us to reach the people, the farthest places. We need people, we have to go to communities where you need to cross rivers, protective gear. We don't have any of those things. So those things become very challenging. But we can't sit down and say we want to work. So what do? We look at our strategies and we revise some of them. So now if I can't go to some of these places, what do? We look for churches, we look for places where people congregate and assemble for various things, and we ask them to give us some of their time. That way it means we are not spending money on looking for a venue, we are not spending money on trying to get public address systems or hire them or whatever and talk to them, but we use the facilities that are there to reach the people. We want to go to the marketplaces, so some of the marketplaces have the public address systems, and we go and we use those. But right now, even to reach them is a challenge.
So let me get this straight. You asked for over 30 million.
Yes.
You have had 7 million approved.
Yes.
You've received about 2 million.
Yeah.
You have how many offices?
275.
And you have to pay electricity bills for all of these offices. You have to equip and tool these offices.
We rent some of the offices.
You have no vehicles, no protective gear.
No public address systems.
No public address
people say,
systems.
for instance, people say, why don't you go around with the vans? The whole commission has 2 vans.
For the nation of Ghana.
Yes.
To educate the nation of Ghana, you have 2 vans.
2 vans. 2 cinema vans. So tell me how much we can do.
And you believe this is deliberate?
Well, I'm beginning to think so. I mean, we've seen successive governments treat us this way, so I'm beginning to think so. And you see, there's so much emphasis on elections itself. So, for instance, we ask for all of these things. We've asked year in year. I came into NCC in 2015. Before I came into NCC, the last time we saw some level of retooling was in 2012 when the late Professor John Evans at Mills gave us some pickups, and I think before that it was under Kufuor, His Excellency Kufuor, that the Commission saw the highest level of retooling. The highest level of retooling was under Kufuor, and then when J.E. Mills came, we saw some level of retooling as well. So, for instance, the youngest vehicle in NCC is 8 years old. Is 8 years old, and so you have the whole issue of maintenance and recurring expenses that just don't add up. If you flip and you look at our sister governance institutions, for instance, EC was given vehicles in 2018, 2019, and even in 2020. And so
now you share a building with the EC.
Yes, we share a building with the EC. So you see all of this.
Sometimes.
No, I'm not jealous. I'm like, wow. It's very warped, our thinking, I think, is very warped. It is what it is. We can't say you won't work. You cannot at all say you won't work. So you try and motivate your staff to do their best under the circumstances. And that's why we look for strategic alliances and collaborators so that we complement each other in our strengths and in our weaknesses as well, and begin and still try and be as effective as we can. But I want to talk again about the research.
I'm so sorry I keep doing this to you, because I've split up the show in a certain way in my head. And we will be talking about the research. We have a quick break coming up, and when we come back, it's the research and your plans that we'll be focusing on. But just in the 2 or 3 minutes we have to that break, do you feel that you as the chairman are doing everything in your power to impress upon the state?
Yes.
I want to say the state because successive governments do the same thing. To impress upon the state to retool your organization for the benefit of Ghanaians?
On hindsight, I'd say I've done everything I can. You know, our budgets are determined, or our ceilings are determined by the Ministry of Finance, and then you go and justify your ceiling to the select committee, and we have every year in, year out, explain to them our challenges, our resource constraints, and why we think we should be retooled. You speak to some of them privately, you speak to them in the formal settings as well, but I don't think that I would fold my hands. So you continue to find ways and avenues of still getting the message across, so that by a certain time people begin to appreciate what, but I think they know, because you speak to them and they tell you, oh, NCC, we need to do something for you people, but they say that and nothing really comes out of it.
Do you think it's about time we started advocating for the NCC's funding to be completely autonomous and, you know, not under the control of the
Ministry of Finance? You know, there is actually some growing conversation around that. If you look at the Auditor General, you look at SHRAJ, NCCE, Electoral Commission, the law under the Constitution says our expenses, salaries, everything shall be charged under the Consolidated Fund. And there was a case, Brown and the Attorney General, that was actually instituted by a former employee of the Audit Service, where the court actually ruled that we should not, our budget should not even be a subject for discussion. When we bring our budget, you look at it and you give us our budget to go and do our work. So and the courts, yes, and I know that there are ongoing discussions around that.
Why not just go to court and have that ruling enforced?
We are considering that as well.
Yeah, I would have thought that would be plan A.
Well, you see, there has been some engagement with the Ministry of Finance to take a look at it. At the end of the day,
are you worried about stepping on toes?
No, I'm not worried at all about. I'm not stepping on toes. I'm only asking for what is my due. I'm not stepping on toes, but I also think that it should be, you know, your last resort. You should continue to dialogue with them. If we get adequate funding, it doesn't need to come to that. But perhaps if we look at things the way they are going and we continue to see the writing on the wall that does not support our concerns, that really maybe people just don't care about the work that we do, then we would do what we have to do in order to ensure that we are resourced and retooled. Listen, we are paid. We don't work for free. We are paid. And so it bugs my mind that our compensation budget, for instance, is close to 40 million annually. So you give me 40 million in salary and then you give me 2 million to work. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I'll let that sizzle in your spirit while we take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to learn about this all-important research that the the NCCE has been doing, and they will be doing again this year, and how useful it'll be for you. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Upfront. My name is Kojo Yankson. My guest is Josephine Nkrumah. She's the chairman of the NCCE. Now, as they're gearing up for election 2020 and trying as hard as they can to change your mind about not voting, among other things, they've been doing some work. and exploring some very interesting information in the report that comes out of it. What's it called again?
It's called Matters of Concern to the Ghanaian Voter.
Concern to the Ghanaian Voter. Tell us about it.
So Matters of Concern to the Ghanaian Voter is one of our flagship programs that we implement in the election year. And basically what we try and do is to distill the concerns of Ghanaians through the research. And then when we have done that, it's a nationwide research. Last year, I think, in 2016, we reached almost 10,000 respondents countrywide. And this year, we're hoping to do the same. Now, when we have compiled the data and we distill the collation of all the concerns of Ghanaians, we would then prioritize. And once we've done that, we launch our report, and you find that the political parties are really looking out for it, because now it means that your campaign must be targeted. You must begin to address the issues that Ghanaians are talking about as what concerns them. And so the conversation takes a different dimension, and you have a more intelligent conversation. So it takes away from the cacophony of you did this, I didn't do this, and all the insults and the intemperate language, and people begin to have an issues-based campaign. It has proven effective, and if you would look, for instance, the trend 2012-2016, top 3 concerns were education, health, and employment. And if you look even at the current government, you'd see that there is a relationship between those concerns and the government's intervention. So you now have free SHS, you have trying to build up on our health facilities, the ambulances, the drones, and of course the employment. You have the NAPCO, planting for food and jobs. So you see that these concerns begin to shape government intervention, whether it's on social policy, whether it's on economic, whatever it is, it begins to address those issues. I think this year we're also focusing on the issue of vigilantism. Ayahuasca is still, fresh in our minds, and other past and by-elections, and we want to remain that kind of destination or that kind of country where we are still seen as the beacon in West Africa when it comes to elections, transition of government. We've done so well as a country in that regard, and we don't want anything that takes away from it. And NCC believes very strongly that we have a role to play in ensuring that these elections, we place emphasis on peace building, on anything that takes away from violence. And so we're going to be doing a lot of engagement with political party youth activists, other youth groups, bodybuilding associations, all manner of people, to get them to understand that violence, the commodity of violence, is not going to guarantee us any peace. It's not going to guarantee development. If at all, it takes away from all of that. And also get the citizen to understand their role in all of this. Whether you are home or these people that orchestrate violence, they don't live on Mars and arrive on Earth. They live amongst us. We should begin to speak to these issues. Young children need to understand they have a role. If you have a big brother and you see that he's engaged in some activity that you consider not worthy, you should be able to say, oh, Brother Kojo, I don't think is good for our country. Everybody must play a role, and we should not at all underestimate these undercurrents of vigilantism. Just at the end of last year, despite the passage of the bill into law, despite all the work that we were doing with the National Peace Council, we still had reports that there was evidence to suggest that some of the parties were still actively engaged in training vigilante groups. Yeah. You understand? And it's something that security experts are talking about, and it even goes beyond our borders. The moment some, terrorists, and they sense there's that unrest, it builds the perception of vulnerability of our state, and people begin to take advantage of these things. So we should all wake up to that real potential of, toppling, our peace and security, and speak up about it. And if we all come together and do that, I'm sure that we can tackle vigilantism head on. And I still say for NCC that we will continue to name and shame any political party that is engaged in vigilantism. As the Vigilantism Act, for instance, has been passed, I'm still wondering, I'm trying to get that information, that one of the things that the law sought to address was to disband the vigilante groups. They were supposed to go and indicate in writing or something to the Attorney General. Has that at all been done? We all seem to be silent. We don't know if that has been done. These are the critical things that we need to be addressing.
But are you naming and shaming? Who have you named so far?
This year we haven't heard of anything, so we haven't named and shamed. This is just to say that yes, we haven't gone to bed on this. We are also being very vigilant about it. We're keeping our ears on the ground, and that is one of the key concerns of our IPDCs, to look at it at the grassroots level and tackle it quickly with the security agencies.
Right. This is how I'd like us to wrap up. Today, Multimedia launched Election Headquarters. This is perhaps the most comprehensive election coverage program that we have in Ghana. It certainly was in 2016, and it will be this year. Now, it aligns quite beautifully with one of the things that you talked about, the research that you're doing to identify and prioritize the issues across the country. We have a show which is part of Election Headquarters called Ballot Box. It seeks to do the same thing, go around, let people tell us what the issues are, and we group them, rank them, and we get those seeking election to come and speak to them. So I suppose, to wrap up, I'd love to hear what you think the role of the media and Election Headquarters can be in supporting the work of NCCE.
Well, NCC always says that civic education is a shared responsibility, and so we're always happy to see that the media also plays a critical role there. And as you said, the work you're doing really complements the work of NCC. We should build stronger alliances. We're not rivals in this respect. Whilst you are doing your work on collating some of these views, you would only hear of it on your platforms. But you also know that there are a great many Ghanaians who don't have access to these platforms. That is the work of NCCE. So that is when we come in, because we go on the ground and speak to the people. We engage them. So we complement what you are doing. I would like to see a greater collaboration between media and NCCE. I would like to see media giving us that space on their platforms to also engage the citizenry through mass communication. I would like to see media being responsible at this time. I can't fault Joy FM in that regard, but there are a plethora of radio stations who fund the cacophony in this country when it comes to elections. We want a more responsible media, and I know that National Media Commission, the Media Foundation for West Africa, will rise up to the occasion and begin to speak to media, understanding their role in charting peace for this country as well.
Well, I certainly hope to see a lot of that in 2020. I can't thank you enough, Josephine.
Thank you for having me.
For being on the show. Upfront returns next week. Until then, though, it's been a pleasure. Have a good night.